different perimeter that is established depending on the logistics of that event. Now, you established earlier that the building upon which the shooter uh, operated from was outside of that established perimeter, correct, for the Butler, Pennsylvania event?
It was outside of our secure perimeter, yes.
Now, that building was, I believe, 500. How far away was that building from the president?
It was approximately 200 yards.
200 yards. Now, the individual used an AR-15 in order to uh, act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question is, why does the Secret Service perimeter, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
There are a number of weapons out there with a number of ranges. Again, an advance was completed. The determination of the perimeter, I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some of it has to do with terrain, some of it has to do with buildings, some of it has to do with assets and resources that are available.
And so what I'm hearing is that a perimeter was not established outdoors in an outdoor venue that would prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able to be within the range of Secret Service protection.
A perimeter was established, and even though there were buildings that were outside of that perimeter, it wasn't just that building. There were a number of buildings in the area, and there was overwatch that was created to help mitigate some of those buildings.
Respectfully, Dr. Cheatle, as well, as a person who has experienced an enormous amount of threat incidents, including incidents that have never been reported publicly, there is a common pattern that happens here, whether it's Secret Service, FBI, Capitol Police, local departments. After a critical security failure, we often hear there will be an independent investigation. That independent investigation gets set up. Usually the expectation is between 2 to 3 months after the incident, and then nothing really occurs from there. The report is usually not satisfactory to the questions that are usually being raised here. And most importantly, corrective action is rarely taken. If I were to state anything that I think is profoundly important, is that we need to have answers to the public. Ideally, I would encourage you and the agency to be more forthright with the members that still have yet to have their questioning, because the public deserves to have full confidence, and the stakes are too high. The violence that could break out in this political moment, regardless of party, in the event of someone getting hurt, constitutes a national security threat to the entire country. Thank you, and I yield back.
Could I go back to something you
Yes,
said?
please. Feel free, Director.
Ma'am, if I could just speak to something you said at the outset when you started your questioning. I want to assure you and everyone on this committee that I'm not waiting for a report to take action. We have been conducting analysis all along, and we have been adding additional features to our security details since this incident occurred.
And I'd hope you can highlight and illuminate what some of those are in the event of other members questioning as well.
Very good. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I request unanimous consent for that photo to go into the official record.
Without objection to ordered.
Thank you, Director. Your agency has a no-fail mission, and on Saturday, July 13th, your agency spectacularly failed. The failure resulted in the death of Corey Comprador and serious injury to two other rally attendees, David Dutch and James Copenhaver, besides the injuries to President Trump. It is unfathomable that a 20-year-old on the radar of Secret Service and local law enforcement before President Trump went on stage was able to climb onto the roof of a building with a rifle and fire off multiple rounds before he was neutralized. Was Mr. Crooks acting alone?
Again, I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation.
Was he just a lone gunman?
I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation for motive.
What did the Technical Services Division determine was going to be the event perimeter?
Those are questions that we are asking, and we are still,
I mean, you're sitting here today. Come on, Director. Everybody said this. You knew you were going to be asked that question because it's been asked multiple times. So this is an easy one. What did they determine was going to be the event perimeter? So you should know that. I mean, this is not, gee, I got to wait till someone else tells me. What was it?
again, I don't want to speak to specifics of the event.
Okay,
that took place.
this is a specific.
I understand.
This is a specific that you ought to know. As someone who said the buck stops with me, I'm going to stay in my job. I'm going to give the answers to the American people. And I know what happened, except for you're not going to tell us. And you're not going to tell the American people. And you yourself said in an interview that foments this notion of conspiracy theories. Guess what? When you sit here and repeatedly tell people, hey, I have to wait, as it frustrated everybody on this committee, guess what? It undermines your credibility and whether you're really going to get to it. So I'm going to ask you again, what did the Technical Service Division determine was going to be the event perimeter?
We are still gathering reports. We are interviewing
You
individuals.
know what it is, though. No, you're just not
When
going to tell us, right?
When I have those details, I will most certainly share those.
Was the gun already on the roof, or did the shooter carry the gun up with him?
I do not have that information at this time.
Well, when was the last sweep of that roof done prior to the rally?
I do not have that information at this time.
So how many holds? I mean, so most of us here have been in events, and Secret Service has been there. There's been security, and I can't tell you how many times we've said there's going to be a security hold right here. So we're going to wait, and we wait to 1 or 2 or 3 minutes, and yet we're hearing from you apparently that there were no holds in place. So ever instituted here with President Trump's going on stage. And you said, and this is, I think, connected with this, you said they hadn't adjudicated the shooter to be a threat. He was adjudicated to be a suspicious person, even though we've got some dynamic video that Mr. Krishnamurthy put on the video for us. So I guess my question for you is, and I think you answered this, I just want to see if you're consistent with what you said about an hour and a half ago. What do you do if a suspicious person is identified by the agency?
So at a number of our events, it is not unusual.
I know it's not unusual. What do you do?
Those individuals that are identified as suspicious, we will send teams out to
Was a team sent out here then?
There were teams that were sent to identify and interview that individual.
They were sent to interview the individual who's scampered up in camo on top of a roof within 130 yards of his target. And did your team get there? When did your team get there to conduct that interview?
I don't have the details on the timeline. It is my
So if they did send a team and they're going to interview him, and you described that earlier as an investigation, why didn't they put a security hold on President Trump going on stage at that rally?
At a number of our protective sites, there are suspicious individuals that are identified all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean that they constitute a threat.
Of course not. But here you got a guy scampering up the side of a building on top of a roof. It's identified to you, and you said you sent a team there, and you can't answer that. And this gets to one of my finer points, Mr. Chairman, if I can make it, and that is, we can have these kind of interview sessions, 5 minutes. Everybody gets a kiss at the pig, 5 minutes, and she gets to stonewall us, not deliver answers. So we say, okay, we're going to put together a congressional committee, a blue ribbon committee. Same crap will happen. I am calling, and I'll support that, but I will tell you this, I am calling on the speaker to give us and put together a truly independent commission of qualified former Secret Service agents, presidential and VIP protective services people who can actually conduct this kind of investigation and give us real answers? Because I don't think you're going to give us those answers. You should have come today ready to give us answers. I call upon you to resign today. And I also would say I've got a bunch of UC requests, if I can go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed with the request.
Thank you. I apologize. It
All right, that's all right, go ahead.
It might take a
Very
moment.
important.
So Anthony Guglielmi, the Secret Service spokesman, one from him.
Without objection, so ordered.
Article, U.S. Secret Service says it previously denied Trump requests for additional resources, New York Times reports.
Without objection, so ordered.
Secret Service says it denied earlier Trump requests for more federal resources.
Without objection, so ordered.
Secret Service acknowledges denying some past requests by Trump's campaign for tighter security.
Without objection, so ordered.
Preliminary findings by Senator Ron Johnson and his committee.
Without objection, so ordered.
Articles entitled, Notice Anything Different About Trump's Secret Service Detailed. Next, former Biden official corrects herself after saying Dems must turn their fire on Donald Trump to beat him. Secret Service director says buck stops with her, but she will not resign. Disney Star Wars Mark Hamill cracks joke about Trump's ear bandage following assassination attempt. Biden, I haven't engaged in inciting rhetoric. Trump has. I'm just talking about threat to democracy. Piece called Who is Secret Service Chief Kimberly Cheatle? Charlemagne the God says Trump solely responsible for violent rhetoric that led to attempt on his life. Video actress Amanda Seals pushes conspiracy theory Donald Trump assassination trip was staged. Report Secret Service identified rooftop as a potential vulnerability days before the rally. Watch BlackRock removes ad showing former President Donald Trump's would-be assassin. Why does the Biden administration have 100% confidence Secret Service after assassination attempt? Secret Service director, we didn't put snipers on the roof because it was kind of sloped. Here's what Thomas Matthew Crooks did in the days leading up to Trump assassination attempt. Secret Service director under scrutiny for diversity initiatives after Trump assassination attempt. The official story on Trump shooting makes no sense at all. Andrew McCabe says Trump assassination.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. I'm happy to assent to all of them. I just so as to facilitate.
You don't want me
our
to read?
proceedings.
Is it too tedious?
Well, we're not even really hearing them anyway. So if we could,
Is it?
it's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
You would like me to slow? I'll slow it down. I was probably going too fast. Secret Service's explanations for security failures ahead of Trump assassination attempt are not adding up. U.S. reportedly received intel of Iranian plot to assassinate President Trump. What WTH? Secret Service now saying that they didn't put any agents on the roof because slight slope was too dangerous. Report, U.S. officials received intel of Iranian plot to assassinate Donald Trump before Crook's attempt. Exclusive GOP rep Cloud. Homeland Security Agency is interfering in House's assassination investigation. Why Trump's raised fist after surviving assassination attempt is triggering the liberal media. Questions swirl over the security lapse at Trump rally, reviving old concerns about Secret Service. Secret Service scrambles to shift blame after Trump shooting as backlash hits hard. Nobody contacted me. Must see 6-camera split screen of assassination attempt captures everything shooter was in open 2+ minutes. Murillo, 5 reasons you should be angry. Breaking, shooter spotted up to 30 minutes before firing, reported multiple times. Pictures taken, no one stopped him. Cheatle calls the 30 minutes between noticing and neutralizing shooter a very short period of time. Secret Service director says buck stops with me on Trump assassination attempt, but won't resign.
Mr. Biggs, we'll stop right there. We can retake them on the next one. I know there are more,
Okay.
but without objection, we'll enter into the record all of those, and we'll take up the others after the next speaker. Chair now recognizes Ms. Brown from Ohio for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to highlight certain comments from Ranking Member Raskin, my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, President Biden and Vice President Harris, and that is political violence is completely unacceptable in this country, full stop. It is an assault on our democracy itself, and I am devastated by this attack on a candidate for the president, for the office of the highest office in the land, and continue to pray for the victims of this shooting and their families. As someone who has known gun violence firsthand, no one should have to experience the pain of losing a loved one to weapons of war. It is deeply unfortunate political violence has become far too common. Whether it is the deadly attack on the Capitol on January 6th, the assault on Speaker Pelosi's husband, or the threats of violence against election workers, we all must work to condemn political violence and tone down the rhetoric. So, Director Cheatle, on behalf of the hardworking men and women of the Secret Service, can you give us some perspective as into what goes into securing an event like the rally? Like, how much time do you have to prepare?
Thank you for the question. Generally, when we receive notification that there's going to be an event taking place at a venue, the advance team assignments are made, and there is a 5-day process to conduct walkthroughs, coordinate with staff, local staff, and whether it be campaign staff or the protectee staff, and then with local law enforcement on where the perimeter is going to be, the size and the scope of the event, how many attendees there are going to be, if it's an indoor rally, outdoor rally, what sort of assets are available locally, what sort of assets the Secret Service can bring to bear, and what the scope of the event that the staff is trying to accomplish.
So, to that point, how many agents were recommended or requested as opposed to how many were assigned?
So I'm not going to get into specifics of how many were assigned, but those numbers that were requested were provided.
And how many local agents were involved in the preparation, if you will, that you talked about, that 5-day preparation?
So there were a number of local agents from the local office, as well as agents from the former Trump detail that were involved in that advance process.
Do we have a number?
I do have a number. I'm not going to release that number in this setting.
You're not making this easy for us. This is a shocking incident on the former president's life and an appalling instance of political violence and a threat to our democratic values. I'm thankful that the former president is on the mend. And again, I'm grieving for the family and friends of Corey Compatore, who lost a loved one in this shooting and now know the unbearable pain of gun violence. I really hope this serves as a reminder about our responsibility to attack policies, not personalities, to be honest and truthful, and to treat one another with dignity, respect, and thoughtfulness. And with that, I yield my remaining time to Ranking Member Raskin.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for those very powerful and moving remarks. Director Cheatle, we don't want to lose a presidential candidate to an AR-15 attack. We cannot lose a presidential candidate to an AR-15 attack, and we can't lose any more citizens to AR-15 mass violence, mass shootings. And we certainly don't want an attempted AR-15 assassination or assassination attempt to set off political violence or riots in America. So this is deadly serious business. The vice ranking member pointed out that a report in 60 days won't do it for us because we have a responsibility. Members of Congress have a responsibility to take action now if there's anything we can do to prevent this. So my question for you is, what is informing your operational decisions right now that you've invoked? Without a report, can you tell us what are the preliminary judgments, or if you don't want to foreshadow the report, fine. What are your personal professional judgments informing the operational decisions you're making right now?
Certainly, and I appreciate that question. I don't want to make any preliminary judgments on what happened on this particular day, but I can tell you that we have looked at, as we did immediately in the aftermath, what the security plan for the Republican National Convention was going to be, and we made adjustments to the interior of the perimeter there. We looked at the protectees that we have here in the Washington, D.C. area and our protective sites, and we did make some adjustments to their security posture. And as we continue to move through the next several weeks, even yesterday with the announcement of the president no longer running, we have made adjustments to the vice president's detail. We are already prepared for an eventual VP nominee, and we continue to make those assessments. I think it just shows how dynamic the environment is that this agency works in every day.
So you've made the same kinds of common sense judgments and intuitive recommendations that members of the public and members of Congress are asking about right
Yes.
now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank
And
the
before I
gentlelady.
recognize Ms. Mace, I have to say, Director, we're pretty close to the halfway point during this. You answered more questions with an ABC reporter than you have with members of Congress. We have a lot more questions. The American people are demanding that we get answers to those questions, and that's what the purpose of this hearing is today. So I'm sure a lot of the questions that have already been asked are going to be asked again, and hopefully we can get some answers to those questions. I strongly implore you to answer those questions. You're here with a subpoena, and we expect you to answer the questions. Chair now recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cheatle, the American people are watching and they're wondering if there are any questions you can answer honestly today. So Director Cheatle, I have a series of questions, very specific questions. I want very specific answers. Most of my questions are going to demand a yes or no answer. Do you understand?
I do.
Okay, my first question. Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question, yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible.
This is a yes
failure.
or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure, yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable, yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent, yes or no?
I have always been eager
Yes
to
or no?
come
You didn't
and
want to
talk
answer
to
the
committee.
question. We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier, Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political? Yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record articles by Punchbowl News, Political Playbook, Washington Post, all done at 5:24 a.m., 6:12 a.m., 6:34 a.m., a solid 3 to 4 hours before this committee got your statement.
Without objection to ordered.
Okay. Is the Secret Service fully cooperating with our committee?
Yes.
Okay, you say you're fully cooperating with this committee. On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or
I
no?
will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th? Yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That
on
is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Mr.
You're
Chairman,
completely
Mr.
dishonest.
Chairman,
Chairman, I want to,
Mr. I'm
Come
gonna
on.
we have to
continue.
maintain decorum in this committee,
Any,
no matter
have
how
you provided
upset we
any and
get.
all memos to this committee that we've asked you on July 15th? Have you provided all memorandums within the Secret Service?
I would have to get back to you on
That is a no. You are being dishonest or lying. Like you're being dishonest here with this committee. These are important questions that the American people want answers to, and you're just dodging and talking around it in generalities. And we had to subpoena you to be here, and you won't even answer the questions. We have asked you repeatedly to answer our questions. This isn't hard. These are not hard questions. Have you provided us all communications from the Secret Service related to that day and that rally? Have you provided this committee? We've asked for this information on July 15th. Have you provided any of this information that this committee has asked of the Secret Service? Any of it?
I'll have to get back to you. on
Have
that.
you even read this letter that we sent you? Did you even read this?
Yes.
Okay. And you have said you don't know, you have no idea. Well, the answer is no. We haven't gotten a single document or piece of information or data from you or your agency in related to the rally that we have asked you for. So, was this attempted assassination of Donald Trump a failure of training or execution, or both?
I think that those are answers that we need to
Training,
examine.
execution, or both? Which one?
I think those are answers.
All
we
right,
need to determine.
how many Secret Service personnel have lost their jobs due to this colossal failure?
At this time, none.
How many Secret Service personnel have been required to take a refresher course on how not to let people shoot Donald Trump?
Our personnel are currently operational. We are examining the facts of this investigation, and we will make the changes necessary.
What time did law enforcement become aware that there was an individual on the roof with a clear line of sight to President Trump?
I am still verifying timelines.
Of course, 9 days in, you have no answers. How many minutes went by between the time law enforcement saw and took photos of crooks and the shooting? How many minutes?
I am still verifying timelines.
57 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Before I recognize Ms. Stansberry, I believe I want to recognize Mr. Mfume for a unanimous consent.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I beg your indulgence. I meant to do this earlier. I'd like to have unanimous consent that it be submitted for the record. The 2023 ranking of best and worst workplaces in the federal government, compiled by the Office of Personnel Management, which shows the United States Secret Service coming in, again, as I said earlier, 413th out of 459 sub-agencies, and this appears in the July 17th edition of Government Executive.
Without objections ordered. Chair now recognizes Ms. Stansberry from New Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by just saying that part of why you have bipartisan agreement here on the dais about the severity and importance of this hearing is because this is not just a single shooting. This is about national security and the security of our democracy. It's not just one operational failure. This is about our public officials safe. And what does that signal to our country and to the world about American security and the ability of our officials to do their jobs safely? So I want to start by saying thank you to all of our brave men and women who are in the uniform, whether it's the Secret Service or local law enforcement, who put their lives on the line. I think obviously we honor their service, but this is really about operational failures and what it means for our country at large. And I also want to reaffirm that we must condemn unequivocally political violence of any kind, not just political violence, and that it cannot be tolerated in this democracy. And also to offer my prayers for the slain Fire Chief Corey Comprator, and also prayers for those who've been injured. Now, I think, the tone of this hearing is, how is it that a 20-year-old young man with a gun that was legally purchased by his father could, on the day of a rally, go to a gun shop, legally purchase ammunition, show up to a secured site, and then not only attempt an assassination of a political figure, but kill and injure 2 others? How could this happen? I'm not asking yet. I think we've had a lot of testimony here today. I want to talk a little bit about the timeline. Now, here's what we know, and I know, Director, you were also on the call that we had a few days ago with the FBI and other law enforcement, so I respect that you are not able to share, based on your testimony, some of the details that are currently being investigated, but I know you were on the call because I heard you on the call and you heard them too. So I'm going to lay out the timeline a little bit. On July 3rd, the rally was announced that it was going to be in Butler. On July 6th, 3 days later, we know that the shooter searched for dates for Trump and DNC events. On July 7th, so this is 4 days after the announcement, the shooter went to the site. He actually physically went to the site. On July 12th, the shooter went to a gun range where he and his dad regularly go and practiced shooting. And the next day, on July 13th, he went to the site again before the rally began. We know that he then went and searched online for a gun store, where he went and he purchased 50 rounds of ammunition, went home, got his father's AR, which was legally purchased, and returned to the venue. At 5 p.m. that evening,
This is more than an hour before Donald Trump actually took the stage that evening. Local law enforcement were made aware that there was a suspicious man. In fact, at 5:20, local law enforcement flagged that he had a rangefinder, and they radioed their concerns and sent around pictures of the individual. At 5:40, 20 minutes before local law enforcement actually identified the shooter, and at 5:51, Secret Service was notified of the suspicious person by the state police, and 1 minute later, they distributed that information. That was before Donald Trump even took the stage. That was 11 minutes before he took the stage. So the Secret Service was aware that there was a suspicious person. At 6:03, he took the stage. At 6:09, rally goers, as was shown in the video, identified this gentleman climbing on the roof. At 6:11, 3 shots were heard, 3 rounds of shots. And of course, the president and the other victims were shot. This shooter was a 20-year-old young man, no criminal record, legally purchased gun and ammunition, who for days in the lead up to this shooting was searching mass shooters. He even had a picture of a mass shooter on his cell phone the day of the shooting. He searched for explosives. He searched high-level officials. So the American people want to know, how did a 20-year-old young man with access to a military-style weapon actually bring it onto an unsecured perimeter who for days had been planning a mass shooting event? And I think that, Madam Director, with all due respect, the answers that we've received here in this hearing today are completely unsatisfactory. How could this happen? We need answers. We need answers not just for the family members of the gentleman who was killed and those who were injured, but we need answers for our democracy. Because as others have stated here today, we are in a highly politically charged environment right now. We are only weeks away from one of the most significant presidential elections in American history. And it is clear that our public officials' safety has not been secured. And it is not just a matter of one shooting, it is a matter of national security. So I hope that you will take our comments to heart. I hope that there will be accountability, and we need answers. And with that, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. LaTurner from Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cheatle, I have a question just right off the bat. Something that you've bragged about repeatedly is that you've increased protection for the 36 individuals that the Secret Service is also entrusted with. Is that correct?
I think I stated that we currently have 36 protectees, and that we continue to make evaluations on where those levels of protection are provided.
You've mentioned specific increases in protection that you've provided for some of those individuals, correct?
Correct.
Based on what?
Well, some of it has been as a result of the tragic incident that occurred on the 13th. We went back and reassessed where we were at in providing protection and wanted to make sure that we were not, overlooking anything, considering this most recent incident.
So the Secret Service needed to learn that allowing a rooftop 150 yards away from a protectee, not putting that in a perimeter, not having someone guarding that roof, that information is new to you, and it's caused you to increase protection to other folks that are under your care?
I think it is prudent after any incident that occurs to go back and take a look at your current practices and see if there is anything that needs to be done differently.
It's inconsistent because what you said earlier to Mr. Turner was that the protection that you were offering to President Trump was in line with the current threats, him being a former president, him being a nominee of a major political party, the threats from Iran, the protection that you're providing him was adequate. Do you stand by that statement?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think it's a problem that the Americans' trust in the federal government is an all-time low? Do you think that's a problem?
I think that it's unfortunate.
I don't know why you're quibbling with my word. Is it a problem or is it not?
I think the American public deserves to have trust in their federal government.
Okay, I don't know why you're being difficult. I'm just, it's a simple question. Are you concerned about the increasing prevalence of conspiracy theories going on out there right now?
Yes.
I am too. You've been incredibly inconsistent with your answers before this committee today and what you were willing to reveal. You've acknowledged that the shooter was identified with a rangefinder, that President Trump's detail was sufficient for the threats he faced from Iran, that certain details were erroneously reported, in your words, but you haven't been willing to provide any information about the decision to place the building in question outside the perimeter, the explosives placed in the shooter's vehicle, the use of a drone by the shooter, or when exactly the Secret Service identified the shooter as a threat rather than merely suspicious. What is your standard today for what you are willing to answer and what you are not? Because you've been inconsistent.
I'm certain that you can understand that some of the information that's been provided to you thus far has come from the FBI's investigation and has come from information that we have released. I want to make sure that information that is being provided to this committee is consistent and is factual.
But the question about the drone that the chairman asked at the beginning of the hearing, he said, do you know this information? And you acknowledge that, yes, you do know the information, you just don't want to tell us. I guess my question is that if you wanted to wait till the end of the investigation to draw conclusions, which you've acknowledged you're drawing conclusions right now and making changes. But if that was your standard, that you want to wait till the end of the investigation to draw conclusions, okay, at least you would be consistent in that. But what we're wanting to know today, and what would dispel some of the conspiracy theories out there, what would increase trust with the American people, is for you to let facts out, for you to tell us what you know. And I want to understand from you, why is that a problem? Why is it inconsistent with a quality investigation to release to the American people today at least the information that you know for sure? Because you certainly know for sure more information than you're willing to give us today.
I have released that there was a failure and that there are gaps that we need to make sure that they don't happen again.
That's not acceptable. That's not enough. That doesn't quell any conspiracy theories out there. In your 27 years of experience, would you have been concerned about an elevated location within 150 yards of a protectee that did not have a Secret Service presence? Just based on your experience.
What I can tell you is that every site and every venue
No.
is advanced
I'm asking
differently.
for your experience. Looking at this situation, would that have been of concern to you? Or would you have agreed that it's fine, it doesn't need to be covered?
What I have explained today
You're
is
not going to
that
answer.
there was.
Is it true that at 5:45 p.m., approximately 18 minutes before President Trump took the stage, the Beaver County Emergency Services Unit noticed the shooter on the roof and photographed him? Is that a fact or not?
That is the information that I have from the FBI's report, yes.
You haven't been willing to share whether or when this was communicated to the Secret Service, so I'd like to get into the difference between suspicious activity and threatening activity. Is it suspicious or threatening if an individual is seen around the perimeter with a rangefinder? Is that just suspicious?
That could be termed as suspicious.
If that same individual with the rangefinder is found on a rooftop, is that still just suspicious, or is that considered threatening?
That could be termed still as suspicious.
All right, my time is over. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes Mr. Frost from Florida.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And obviously, you want to start by stressing that political violence is always unacceptable, and acknowledging that this is still an ongoing investigation. But oversight hearings like this are essential components of an investigation, and I want to thank the chair for pulling this together. Madam Director, I appreciate you for being here. The events of July 13th raised serious questions about the efficacy and thoroughness of the security protocols in place. The gravity of the fact that an unsophisticated gunman was able to secure his perch and take a shot at a former president despite multiple layers of security and intelligence are not lost on me. Before I came to Congress, I used to work advance for a major political candidate and have interacted with many different law enforcement agencies on large political events like the one that just happened. How many times was the Secret Service alerted about a suspicious person at the July 13th campaign event prior to the first shot being shot?
I don't have an exact number to share with you today, but from what I've been able to discern, somewhere between 2 and 5 times there was some sort of communication about a suspicious individual.
To the Secret Service specifically. According to reports, the shooter was photographed twice by security officers prior to the shooting. A police officer saw the shooter on the ground and reported him with a photograph as a suspicious person. Multiple local law enforcement officers identified the shooter, radioed that he was acting suspiciously near the event's magnetometers. A local law enforcement tactical team saw the shooter on a roof and notified other security services and also photographed him. One police officer who photographed the shooter saw him scoping out the roof and carrying a rangefinder. My question is, and you've answered this, but why, or you haven't answered this, why wasn't the event paused right then?
Again, I'm not clear on the timeline of when the Secret Service shift and the counter sniper were notified.
But
of an
earlier,
individual
Madam
on the
Director,
roof.
earlier you said that the Secret Service would have paused the rally if they identified a threat.
Correct.
So why wasn't it paused?
Because I have to assume that they did not know that there was a threat when they brought the president out on the stage.
I feel like this is a breakdown in communication between local law enforcement, you all, and other actors at the rally. And again, as someone who's worked on these, I understand that there's multiple people with multiple with the ability to make different decisions on the ground. I've taken over the last week, I've spoken with a lot of folks in local law enforcement in my district and across the country that I've worked with before, and other people have brought up concerns around being able to communicate with with Secret Service during these big events and having their flags taken seriously. I do believe that if Secret Service believed that there was a legitimate threat, that they would have paused the rally. My concern is before that something was flagged and it wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been taken. So I think this shows an issue with communication. And I want to know, Madam Director, what you intend to do to fix that, not in 60 days, but now. We're in the middle of a presidential election. Obviously, a former president who had an assassination attempt, another rally goer who was killed due to this gun violence. We now have a presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party who's also historic, first Black woman to be running for president. And so I am worried about everybody's life. What do you all intend to do to fix this communication breakdown and making sure that you actually take what local law enforcement, local folks are saying more seriously?
We take what local law enforcement relays to us seriously. Let me just be clear on that. As far as the communication.
But not this time.
We always trust our law enforcement partners and have a great relationship with them. We are looking at whether or not there was a communication breakdown. If that was the case, we will take steps to ensure that we correct that, because to your point, we cannot have a communication breakdown.
Madam Director, does you mentioned that the perimeter of the event did not include the rooftop where the shooter was. Does your responsibility and the Secret Service's responsibility to protect a principal stop at the perimeter of an event?
Our responsibility is to ensure the safety and security of the event itself and the protectee who is attending that event and the personnel who are protecting.
So you would say the fact that the rooftop was outside the perimeter is not an excuse for what happened, saying that it was outside the perimeter of the event?
I am not offering that as an excuse.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Fallon from Texas.
How did a 20-year-old loner with a week's notice pick the absolute best location to assassinate President Trump when the entire Secret Service missed it? Director Cheatle, in your leadership, your agency got outsmarted and outmaneuvered by a 20-year-old. How can we have any confidence that you could stop a trained professionals from a nefarious nation state?
Those are absolutely questions that we need to have.
I know they're
answers
questions,
to.
but you know, the fact of the matter is we can't have that confidence. Director, do you have the ability personally, and do you have the authority to beef up security of any of your protectees?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So were you also aware there was a credible threat President Trump was facing? He was facing a heightened security threat to a foreign adversary?
Yes.
Okay. So given that there was an increased threat to President Trump's life, was he provided a full security complement akin to what a sitting U.S. president would receive?
He was provided a full complement of security based on the threat assessment that we had
That's not my
and
question.
the venue.
My question is, if he'd been the sitting president, would he have had the same security he had on July 13th, or would have been beefed up?
There is a difference between the
So
sitting
he didn't. So
president
your answer is he didn't.
and continuity of government
Okay.
and the
So
responsibility
he
that we
did
have.
not. Okay, there wasn't a CAT team, the full CAT team on site. There wasn't counter surveillance teams on site. But this is the thing. You just said you had the ability to beef up the security. You knew about the threat and you didn't. And that's as telling as it is chilling. We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night. Did you talk to, that evening, did you talk to the team, the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational working.
So that's,
for
and the answer is
protection
no. Did you call them the next
of the
day?
President. Yes, I spoke with
You
them.
called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72 hours after?
I don't know the timeline, but I spoke with
Okay,
them
because you're under oath.
immediately
I
following.
think it was 72 hours after you waited 3 days. What is immediately clear is that there are a number of structures that need to be secured. Of these, Director, other than the first, immediate 4, what's the most dangerous site that should have been secured? Because security 101, you got to mitigate the high ground.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the next most dangerous site, what was the closest structure to the president, other than the 4 immediate ones that you had your counter sniper teams on?
There are a number of structures around that event site.
You know who the shooter knew? The shooter has visited the site 2 more times than you have, and he had a drone, and he picked the AGR building.